The music industry is shocked by the news of what really happened to André Rieu, who was 75 years old. No one could have predicted the emotional shock that followed his most recent news. He is known for his amazing shows and timeless songs. This is the hardest thing André Rieu, the beloved king of the waltz, has ever had to do. He is 75 years old. Fans all over the world were shocked when he suddenly got sick during a show, which has made people very worried about his future. You'll cry so hard when you think about what happened to André Rieu. People in the music business are still shocked. But maybe the loss of love didn't start on stage in Mexico City. It began before the lights came on and the crowd cheered. It all started in a cold, quiet house in Maastricht, Netherlands, after the war. Music was the only thing that was playing, and love was nowhere to be found. The 1st of October, 1949 was the day he was born. His family is very religious and he is the third of 6 children. His father, also named André Rieu, was the string director for the Maastricht Symphony Orchestra and was very strict. People looked up to him in public. People at home were afraid of him. As an adult, André would remember that their house felt more like a military base than a home for kids. Discipline took the place of affection. Pressure took the place of praise. They did not love me very much. As André once put it, that's not a feeling. That is the truth. There were no laughs, hugs, or freedom. Friends weren't allowed to come over. The house was quiet, but not because of peace. It was quiet because of fear. His mother was crazy about her marks and practicing the violin. The teachers once called André an artist, which made her feel bad, like it was an abuse. It seemed like perfection was the only thing that was valuable in that house, and even that was never enough. But a miracle happened to André when he was 5 years old in 1954. He loved the person holding the violin more than the violin itself. She was 18 years old, beautiful. Beautiful, and taught him how to play the violin. He wasn't old enough to understand love, but he was old enough to be amazed. He had a hard time following the notes, but the way she played the bow and the way her hands moved on it mesmerized him. Other kids were still having trouble holding the bow properly after a few weeks, but André had already found vibra, the emotional wobble that makes a note come alive. He didn't care if he played perfectly. He finally got to feel something through music. But even this happiness had a dark side. When André turned 13 in the early 1960s, the fights between him and his father got too bad to handle. His love of waltzes and happy classical music. Music and his father's strict ideas about high art didn't go together. His father lost it when André finally told him he wanted to play waltzes. "You didn't learn how to play waltzes from me." It wasn't just being turned down. It was anemia. People thought that his love of happy music was a sign of betrayal. In the late 1960s, around 1968, André brought home the woman he loved, Marjorie, who would become his wife. This was the breaking point. His mother didn't greet her, she told her to leave. She spoke to her son like he was a child and told him, "Go back to your clean room." Like love didn't exist in their world. André chose that night to do something that would change his life forever. He left and didn't come back. His parents have never been to a show. Not even when he packed venues. Not even when he became one of the most famous classical musicians ever. "I went to therapy for years to try to figure out why my childhood felt so empty." He admitted it once. The glory, the castles, and the chanting of his name by thousands of fans. It wasn't able to fully heal the silence that used to fill his home. But it might have helped him write it again. It turned into more than just art. It turned into survival. It turned into the only spot where showing feeling wasn't frowned upon, but instead praised. The violin was more than just a tool. It was his voice, his shield, and the thing that saved him. He once said, "Only when I played did I feel seen." In the dark days of a loveless childhood, he found light in music. He made it his goal to make songs that made people feel alive because of those early wounds. To make happy where there was once quiet. Because his best act wasn't on stage in the end. It was getting through the rejection symphony and making it into something lovely. He had come to a quiet but painful crossroads by the late 1970s. Still hurting from a cold childhood, he had played in his dad's orchestra for years, trying to fit into the standard mold of classical music. He had been cold at home, and that coldness followed him into the music halls. It was formal, stiff, and soulless. He remembered that the players talked about their pay and the weather. The song wasn't brought up. He didn't want this to be his future. He put together a small group of dreamers with a few instruments and a dream in 1978, when he was 29 years old. They were called the Maastricht Salon Orchestra. They played in anywhere someone would listen, in border towns, wedding halls, and other places. There was almost no money and not much glitz. But André was all set to go. Behind the scenes, his life was being changed by something else. Marjorie. Not just his wife, but the thing that holds him together. In secret, they are a teacher, a writer, and a musician. When no one else did, Marjorie had faith in him. Even though his folks didn't support his dreams, Marjorie did. She ran the business, took care of bookings, and even wrote plans without giving her name. Sell more records, she told him one time. Bluntly, when he wasn't sure if he wanted to buy a castle from the 1400s. She wasn't just blowing off steam. She was setting up the base of a power. This kingdom, on the other hand, grew out of therapy, not victory. André had been seeing a therapist for years to help him deal with the wounds of a loveless childhood. Their love wasn't for me. That's not how you feel. It's true. It was only later that he would say that treatment helped him understand how the cold, silence, and void had shaped him. The healing wasn't passive, though. He had to make a world that looked like. Not at all like the one he had just left. By 1987, something was done about that need. André called it quits with the Maastricht Salon Orchestra when he was almost 40 years old. It was time to have bigger dreams and make more than just notes on a page. He began the Johann Strauss Orchestra that year with only 12 players. It was a big, almost silly plan. In the age of rock stars and pop heroes, no one thought a waltz orchestra would be able to make it. André didn't want to fit in, though. He wanted to change the rules. They played their first show on January 1, 1988. No one wore black clothes that were too stiff. The lighting was very dramatic. The music was lively. A lot of people laughed, clapped, and even sang. Some people laughed. He saw something else, though. Tears, smiles, and change. At one point, he said, "I don't want to impress experts. I want to make people feel something." They played small rooms and old folk songs that first year. But the thought that music should be used for fun and not for ceremonies was taking off. Marjorie kept running the show from the background, creating the sound and keeping track of the money. Music, therapy, love, and defiance. All of them had come together for this strange and beautiful test. After 7 years, André had no idea that one waltz at a football field in 1995 would make him famous all over the world. But the goal was always clear, even back then. The point was to be happy. The group did more than just play music. It helped him and the millions of people who would soon come to listen. Before everyone saw André Rieu change a football stadium. Few people knew the quiet war he had already fought to get to the hall where he was dancing. He had worked hard for decades to both get over a childhood without love and show that feeling could be used in classical music. He wasn't going on this trip for his own pleasure, he wanted to bring joy where there had been silence. In 1995, a single act during halftime changed everything and made that need explode into history. People laughed at him and called him a fake and a traitor. But in May 1995, André Rieu did something that will never be the same in the history of classical music. It was the final of the UEFA Champions League in Vienna. The match between Ajax and Bayern Munich was seen by more than 300 million people in Europe. It felt like electricity. But during halfway, something that no one thought would happen did. Rieu and his Johann Strauss Orchestra played Shostakovich's Waltz No. 2 on the field. In a matter of seconds, all 50,000 football fans in the stadium started to move, hum, and clap along. The tense match turned into a grand haul in an instant. People who had never been interested in classical music became interested all of a sudden. It wasn't just a show, it was a societal explosion. After the game, André smiled and said, "Ajax did me a huge favor by scoring right before halftime. The time was just right." What happened next was something that no one could have seen coming. Rieu sold more than 200,000 CDs in just 1 week after that show. Strauss Company, a record that came out quietly the previous year, shot to the top of the Dutch charts and stayed there for an amazing 19 weeks. The record would sell more than 3 million copies around the world. Germany then hugged him. The album made it into the top 5 of the German pop charts, which had never been done before by a classical album. And in Australia, 65 people packed into the Telstra Dome in Melbourne to see him live, making it the country's biggest classical event ever. Nearly 90,000 people came to all 3 shows. At one point, 8 of the top 10 DVDs were Rieu's. Spots on the music DVD chart in Australia. Only Pink and AC/DC were able to stop him from being number 1, but his success didn't protect him from the hate of traditionalists. Critics and traditional purists spoke out. One conductor laughed and said that Rieu's acts were like sexual music videos. Others said he was turning a very old art form into a circus show. The sparkly dresses, the emotional outbursts, the jokes, and the dance-like lighting. It didn't belong in a serious music hall. Still, millions of fans didn't agree. They bought more than just seats. They dressed up, brought their families, danced in the aisles, and cried in.